Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Hard, but it's fair. That's one of my philosophies. You young folks that came up here today did an awesome job. It's difficult for just about anybody. So give them a round of applause for doing a heck of a job. I bring you greetings from Silver Oak Academy, my counselors, my therapists, my directors, my teachers, my student athletes. I bring you greetings from us. We all thank you for the opportunity for me to speak here to you today. But we awfully thank you for accepting Silver Oak Academy the way you have since 2009, our inception here in Carroll County. Obviously, I thank the NAACP, but there are many of you out there that have stretched out your arms and opened them up and welcomed and supported Silver Oak Academy, and I want to thank you. Mr. Joe Getty, Ms. McCormick, Miss Betsy, Mr. Woods, the list goes on. The Chamber of Commerce here in Carroll County, Taneytown, Union Bridge Business Association, KEMAR. It's been an unbelievable welcoming from the community, and I solely appreciate it, making us a part of the village here. We have some dynamic people at Silver Oak Academy, too. Two people I do want to mention, and one person is here today, but one other guy isn't, and he's my community guy. And he's a very important guy, and I give him heck, man. I'm tough on him. Mr. Fuentes, but I want you guys to know he does a great job. He's the one behind all our community service and our give back, because as one of the young folks said up here today, the power of giving versus the power of receiving is what changes all of us. And it's what runs this, it's what used to run this country, and we got to get back to it. Then there's one other person, is my education director. She's a genuine person, just a great all-around person, and she's always there from the beginning the student comes in, and I want to tell you, she never stops. So when they leave, the relationship doesn't end. She continues to work with them, and Catherine Gammons just does a great job with our young men. And like I said, there's a lot of other folks at the school, don't get me wrong, they do a great job, but those two folks really have hung in there with me for a long time, and wouldn't know what I'd do without them. Then I got to go ahead and give thanks to my boss. My boss is here, and you always got to make sure you recognize the boss. And the boss, she reminds me of what my real responsibilities are, how to do them, when I'm not doing them right, and that's my wife, Sonoria. I want to start by telling you folks that, hey, I'm a pretty simple guy. Do things pretty simple. And I learned that from a young age. I try to keep it simple at my school, but there's a lot of complex, intelligent people in today's society. I always got to remind them to bring it back down because it's pretty simple. So we're going to have a nice, simple conversation this morning. So if you're looking for those, pie in the sky type of deals and so forth, it's not about that. You're definitely not going to get the greatest leader of all time, Dr. King, in front of you. I might do some impersonations, but I'm going to keep it as simple as I possibly can. Again, thank you to NAACP for continuing the dream, the legacy of a very important man, very important in my life. I will tell you that when you visit my office, if you look above my desk, you will see a nice picture of the memorial of Dr. Martin Luther King. I couldn't wait to take my kids when they were old enough to realize and understand what Dr. King was all about. I couldn't wait to take them down to Atlanta to the Kingian Center for Nonviolence. And Sonora, you remember, we had them down there. They must have been about 4 or 5 years old, and I'm walking them through like they're 18, 17 years old and so forth. So you would think that I grew up on Dr. King, but I didn't. I came here the last 4 or 5 years of his life. But I do remember the day he died. I remember it like yesterday. I remember Mom going to the front door and crying that day. I remember all the noise outside in Baltimore City around my neighborhood and what was going on. And you guys know what I'm talking about. It was the rioting that was taking place. But I succinctly remember, Mom, what are you crying for? Why are you so upset? My father was out there working hard. My mom cried the blues that day. And as a young boy, that's something you don't ever want to see. She finally told me she was crying because Dr. King was killed. 4.5, 5 years old, somewhere around there, but I still remember it. So that was my introduction to Dr. King. But from there, never lost my way with him, okay? Before I delve into this topic or quick speech that I want to share with you, I want you to try something that I do on a routine basis. And the boss gets after me for this all the time. She said, hey, stop staring at those people. Stop staring at those little kids. But I watch my guys all the time. I watch kids all the time. When you go out in the community, watch them. Take a look at them, observe them. You know, just take a mental note. Don't look at them and judge them. Just watch them and observe. You'll learn a lot about them. You know, you'll see little behaviors. And as you know, behaviors have attitudes behind them, right? Attitudes have character traits behind them. Some good, some weak. Notice I didn't say bad, though, because we all have these things. You know, they're not necessarily bad. And, you know, we'll follow up on that. I promise you we'll get to that as we get to the end of this. Some little bits about Silver Oak Academy. I believe that, you know, we function like a small village. Small village that houses and educates and takes care of young men from multiple states for many different reasons. We focus on our young men and developing their skills and abilities to withstand some of the ills of society and to fend for themselves. So that's a big point for us. Some of those ills, some of those issues, neglect, drugs, violence, theft, family dysfunction, truancy, poverty, abuse, you name it. We're not trying to change young men. We're trying to strengthen young men. That's the overall goal. And it is a difficult process that we and the young men have and develop in the village of Silver Oak Academy, especially when most of the students that I have at the Silver Oak Academy face some of the same ills in society. They have some of the same issues they got to deal with. So you got to understand, I mean, and again, Silver Oak Academy is just a microcosm of society. So all of these same ills that's going on at Silver Oak Academy in the village, I mean, we're dealing with them as a community, as a city, as a country. I'm dealing with them in a little small area of about 11 buildings and 70 acres. So the program that we have, you know, we try to build it around a simple model. Remember, you know, simple man, simple model. Respect, attitude, motivation, and spirit. Real simple. Okay. I will tell you, though, it doesn't end up being simple. It's a difficult process to bring all that together. You steady people who are good leaders. You steady folks. You know, somebody mentioned earlier, you know, about sports and all, and it is big for me. And I study Belichick from the Patriots, and I watched that guy, and you know, I studied Nick Saban down in Alabama, and I watched that guy working with those young men, and they're from all over the country, and I'm sure they have the same deal. They gotta help these young men prepare to deal with these issues out here in society. And you know, let's face it, we may not hear it on the news and so forth, but they're dealing with the same things in that community. What a great job they do, don't they? They lead those young men, they lead those adult men, and they get them to that promised land. Okay, Dr. King and his legacy led over about 200,000 folks in D.C. established the Civil Rights Act, outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, and natural origin, led the bus boycott, protests, and segregation based on race. First president of the SCLC, took on the Jim Crow laws of Birmingham, Alabama, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize at age 35 for his nonviolence teaching. Ultimately, he changed the face of the world. He dared us to take our diversity and accept everyone and love everyone, implemented the nonviolence philosophy for life, and inspired groups of people to come together to fight racism. Got to say those things because, some of those young folks weren't around back then. We got to repeat these things over and over again. We got to practice these things and talk about them because they got to take that legacy and pass it on. Again, I want to thank everybody here for continuing the work that Dr. King laid out for us. And, we still got a lot of work to do, but, keep pressing forward. When preparing for the day, I went back and I listened to some speeches that Dr. King made. And as everyone knows, what an awesome speaker he was. Eloquent, some of the symbolism so at a high level you can't even pick it up the first time it comes around. You got to go back and listen to it again and then make sure you can understand it. But a very inspiring man. The speech I want to reference to you today, or talk to you about today, Dr. King made, was done the day before his assassination. That was, we're talking somewhat close to 50 years ago, and doggone it if that thing doesn't resonate to today. And when I was preparing for this, I was like, man, what do I do here? What do I try to get across? And, times have really changed, Kevin, so I can't really go back and guess what? Wow. So I'm listening to that speech. A lot of those things that he said in that speech, I'm going to say them to you today, and you're going to be like, doggone, he's right. Same stuff, same time, same day. Years later, here they go. Let me make some of these points for you, and I'm going to do some quotes here for you, and then try to do my Dr. King impression for you. And here's my first one. And another reason I'm happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we are going to have to grapple with the problems that men have been trying to grapple with through history. But the demands didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. Men for years now have been talking about war and peace, but now no longer can they just talk about it. It is no longer a choice between violence and nonviolence in this world. It's nonviolence or non-existence in this world. That is where we are today. Doggone if that doesn't ring truth to your ear today. Every time we wake up in the morning, there's a threat of violence that we're hearing about, isn't it? Whether it's nuclear, whether it's gun violence in the community, terrorism, listen, jail and insanity, those are all threats on men's existence now. So 50 years ago, here we go. We're back at it. That man was some prophet, wasn't he? Here's my second quote for you from the same speech. And again, listen for the relevancy towards today. Whenever the Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula of doing it. He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But whenever the slaves got together, something happened in the Pharaoh's court. He cannot hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves get together, that's the beginning of getting out of slavery. Think about it. There it is again. And again, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about my village and my young men sitting there to my left. Because they get to going, boy, and they get stuff going, and they get us all focused on this little big baby crap, and we're running around trying to take care of this and put this fire out and so forth. And all of a sudden you stop, and I think, man, we got bigger things than this to do. What the heck? Them jokers and bamboozled us again. They got us focused on all this crazy stuff. And here we go. We got real work to do. We got to take care of these young folks and get them prepared to go out here and deal with these ills they got to take care of. Because they don't understand the responsibility they got, do they? They think this stuff is easy. They always walking around smiling and having a good time, and I be sitting back laughing because they don't have no idea what's coming, do they? One day I'm gonna be a little bit slower, a little bit more relaxed, and I'm gonna be watching them going to work. And I hope they call me because I can't wait to get a good laugh at them. But I want to stay with that little quote a little bit longer and listen to these things real quick. And remember, we're talking about what the Pharaoh did. and this kind of goes to that bigger village. The wealthiest 1% of American households own 40% of the country's wealth today. Did you hear that? 1%. 40% of the wealth. 1%. So again, let me say it. The wealthiest 1% of American households own 40% of the country's wealth, according to the economist Edward N. Wolf. That share is higher than it's been at any point since at least 1962. And why is that important? Well, you know, there again, 1% of these folks up there, you know, they're getting things done. They got all of these millions. Here we are done. Let's go get this stuff. Let's keep working. And we're just doing the wrong thing. Get our heads on straight. Slow down. Let's do the right thing. We've got to stop spending all this money we got. Daily, there's news about our leadership in America. Man, they keep us going, don't they? We don't know whether we're coming or going. We got to love them. We got to support them. But I tell you what, every day I get some news and I'm watching that stuff on television. I'm like, okay, what happened today? Where are we going now? You know, we got to slow this thing down. We got to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. And the last one to support that last quote is the constant shooting, killing, and stealing, and people fighting and recording fights and using social media about it, just keeping all kind of craziness going on. That's at the smaller village level. One more quote for you. We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country and say, God sent us by here to say to you that you're not treating his children right. And we've come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. And today, the radio stations, Spotify, they sell our young people all kinds of craziness, don't they? I can't wait to get my hand on some of them folks. To stop them and slow them down. I understand that, you know, it's freedom of speech and folks can sing and do whatever. Well, how come they're going to take advantage of our young folks, and then when they get to be 35 and 40 years, they start singing about the right thing? By then, they done ruined about 20 years of, you know, folks. I listened to that last Jay-Z album and said to myself, man, that young man's come a long ways. He made all of that nonsense for a long time, and now he opened up and brought this last album back to half of the young people can't even understand. But he made some serious points in that. Everything in our society today screams sex, drugs, look at me. Most of the time, the artists out there, they're awarded, you know, little trophies for these things, but the bigger deal is all the money they make off of that exploitation. A lot of our young people have minimum living arrangements, and the first thing out the door, they buy the most expensive thing they can have. Another quote, listen to this one. Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness. One day a man came to Jesus when he wanted to raise some questions about some vital matters of life. At points he wanted to trick Jesus, that's right, and show him that he knew a little more than Jesus. He knew a little bit more than Jesus and throw him off base. Now, that question could have easily ended up in a philosophical or theological debate, but Jesus immediately pulled that question from midair and placed it on a dangerous curve between Jerusalem and Jericho. Every time you turn around, folks, when you wake up in the morning, when we have an issue take place in our country, there's 4 people on there, or 3 people, or 2 people that are experts and consultants that have studied here and there, and they've done this in the past, and they're debating about why this took place. And at the end of the day, when they're finished their debate, maybe 3 or 4 days later, there's something else coming up. So in other words, they get us off our base again. They get us focused on something else. And that same thing happens in my small village on a day-to-day basis. We have to think a little bit more critically for ourselves, folks. Remember, is this the right thing to do for our children when we're listening to these debates I'm talking about? These are the things that I filtered my decisions through, or filter my comprehension of what folks are telling me. Is it the right thing to do for our children? Is it the right thing to do for our elderly? Is it the right thing to do for our wealthy and for our poor? First thing we do is allow that large stage of that philosophical debate. We let that dictate to us what our thought process should be, and we got to learn not to do that. I got one more for you. Here's another one to review for you. If I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then a good Samaritan came by and reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's a good one. I messed that up. I'm going to say that to you again. If I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the good Samaritan came by and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? Folks, the lenses, the eyes of the average person these days, it sees themselves first. In the eyes of the way we train folks to come up, our young folks, we're training them just to have a set of lens like this. It shuts off, and the first thing they think and do and respond to is themselves. Any and every action that takes place is viewed if that is that what was me, what would I have done if that was me? That couldn't have been me because I would have did such and such. This is what this person should have done. If it was me, this is what I would have did. My last reference to this speech is a real simple one. And so I am happy tonight. I am not worried about anything. I am not fearing any man. There's an enormous amount of folks in our society today that do everything they possibly can, primarily for the approval of others. One of the amazing things about Dr. King to me is that he was a 39-year-old man when he was assassinated. And to have all of that strength, to have all of that courage, to have all of that wisdom coming out of one man, to have all of those abilities to lead at that time, at that age, was an amazing feat. And to get to that point where you understand that fear can't drive you, that's a tough deal. I'm still working on that one myself here. These things mentioned by Dr. King were very relevant in 1968, and unfortunately, or fortunately, they're still very relevant in 2018. And that's my humble opinion. I still want to talk to you, though, so hang in there with me. I got a few things to hit you with. And remember, I talked about being a simple person, and these are the simple things that I want to talk to you about that affect the village that I run at Silver Oak Academy. So I made a little quick list of them. Anger, love, self-centeredness, fear, acceptance, compassion, greed, insecurity. These are things that can be pretty devastating to a village. I'll just state them again for you real quick. Anger, disrespect, jealousy, getting over, self-centeredness, fear, judging, ignorance, greed, insecurity. Throw another one in there for you. Uncooperative, dishonest, stealing. These are simple things. One by one, but collectively and shared by many can create a tough situation, can't it? And again, I'm not putting my guys down, but I deal with this on a day-to-day basis. We're all practicing some of the same unfortunate character traits, and we put them in and look out. Everyone in this room now, all of you, myself included, we all belong to a village. I also belong to a village with my family, my relatives, my friends, schools I've attended, and so on. Examine your village. Think about that village, and it has some of the characteristics, but my guess is not all of those characteristics, not all of those things apply to your village. And if these things do exist in your village, in your family, you know it, work on them. Work on them. I know most of you are saying, what does this have to do with Dr. King? And I'll tell you, They have everything to do with it. All of these things mentioned above that I shared with you, those ingredients, they are a nice mix, a nice recipe for racism, prejudice, hate, all mixed together. It's one heck of a Molotov cocktail. One heck of a one. And again, I think we take them for granted. Anger, disrespect, jealousy, getting over, self-centeredness, fear, judging, ignorance, greed, insecurity, uncooperative, dishonest, and stealing. Mix them up. Take a sip of that drink. It'll knock you off your feet. It'll cause you some problems you can't prepare for the rest of your life. Now, that's what's going on today. Let me give you a definition of racism. Prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. One's own race is superior. Now, I want us to concentrate on those words. Race is superior. Let me change it around a little bit, and let me know if you heard this before. I'm better than that person. I'm better than that. I would never do that. I'm better than you. We've all heard those words before, right? Let me go back to those character traits, those negative character traits, and I want to define them. Anger, strong feelings of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. Disrespect, lack of respect or courtesy. Jealousy, feeling or showing envy of someone or their achievements and advantages. Getting over, to succeed in making something clear or persuasive. Trying to make somebody follow your lead. Self-centeredness, preoccupied with oneself and one's affairs. Fear, an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that something or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat. Judging, form an opinion or conclusion about. Ignorance, lack of knowledge or information. Greed, intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. Insecurity, uncertainty, or anxiety about oneself. Lack of confidence. And uncooperative, unwilling to help others or do what they ask. Dishonest, intended to mislead or cheat. And stealing, just taking another person's property. This stuff isn't rocket science, folks. Dr. King made it in 1968, the major issues in our country. That's what they were. These major issues now still exist in our villages and our families and our friends. So what do? Again, I go back to those two little words. It's simple. It's very simple. We have to build our villages. We got to base it on simple principles, simple belief system. And believe me, when I say it's simple, I don't mean it's simple. It's a difficult process. And it's one doggone word that we try to do every day at the academy that is a struggle 24/7. Self-awareness. Self-awareness. That's where it starts, that's where it ends, for every one of us in here today. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. Now think about that list of words. I done shared it with you a few times over and over again, and then let's bring it right back to this simple thing. Self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. And how many of us go to work every day and we're in a leadership position, and our position, and we're under attack 24/7, aren't we? There's people coming up to you, shaking hands and hugging you and giving you the, hey, I can't wait to work with you and this and that. Meanwhile, they can't stand you. You don't think we know that, don't we? And they don't think we know. They do. Most of them, they look at me, they think that guy has no idea that I just cannot stand him. And sometimes I go home and I laugh about it. On my ride home, I just gotta laugh. They really think I'm a fool, boy. They really do. I know. But I've been trained really well, and I really appreciate my parents for doing such a heck of a job. Son, be aware of yourself. Be comfortable with who you are. Understand what your weaknesses are, because I got some of those things that I talked to you about before. I was an angry little dude. When I look at that picture in there, I say, geez, what was I mad about on that day? You know, I was angry, Lord. I had no reason to be angry. Sometimes I'm angry for the heck of it. I might see my guys someday, and I bet they be saying, what's the matter with that cat? I just come up, hey, how you doing? Put your pants up, son. I don't know why, I was just mad. But I know I got those things. But I know one thing, I'm going to do the right thing for that young man. No matter what, I'm going to be there for that joker. Sometimes not in the right way. You didn't hear that, state's attorney. I'm just hugging him. So, know your weakness, know your strengths, people. You can check yourself when you need to, or you can express yourself when you need to. I pride myself on being able to make it happen no matter who, what, where, how, and with others. They may not like you, remember. They may not want to even be near you, but you got to make it happen no matter what. You got to understand that. You can't judge them for that weakness they have. You can't attack that weakness. All you're going to do is create a fight. You can't change that person who you think you are. They are who they are. They were 17, 18, 25, 30 years to get to the point. Help them redefine that and put it in motion and make them use something, do something with it. That's what they got. Look at me. I'm trying to tell you, I'm the angry little guy. But I got some use out of it. It wasn't just sports. This has been my dream from 6, 7 years old that I was going to have my own school. That was my dream. Yeah, it was. I wish I was up here today with my Hall of Fame jacket on in the NFL. That was part of the dream, but somebody messed that up. I don't know. I want us to be like Dr. King was, what he stood for and what he believed in. I don't think self-awareness is something we teach only by mouth. You have to practice it, and you got to take opportunities. And that's the only way to get this thing done. We got to give those folks that we know have those weaknesses opportunities to work on. And we got to help them recognize it. Because remember, the new society is, hey, me. I've been places and stop and watch folks. I think they're on the phone and they're looking at themselves in the phone. The boss will tell you. She said, "Why are you staring at them?" I said, "He's just staring at himself in the phone." I get lost with it. I'm like, "Whoop. You ain't seen yourself this morning? You're the same person." Again, I just restated, and I want to restate it again, and that is, we have to be like Dr. King. Don't be like Mike. Don't get me wrong. I like Michael Jordan. He was great. But be like Dr. King. Be aware of who you are. Let's continue the work that he started. Go back and listen to these speeches. Make your kids listen to them. They ain't gonna like it, but let them sit there and listen to it. They ain't that bad. They'll be surprised. But those are the things we have to do. We have to make sure that the things that we expect our young folk to adhere to and be, they have to see those things. They have to be involved in those things. They have to see other things than who? Themselves. They can't keep looking at themselves. They just keep developing into the same thing over and over again. You should see them. Open your eyes, observe them, like I told you at the beginning. Watch the little ones. Watch them as they get older. Watch the ones that be brushing hair all day. Got that camera. They love themselves. I always try to tell them, "Hey, you look good, man. I'm gonna let you know right away. You look real good. You don't have to, keep looking for it. You look good." I want to end by restating what Dr. King said the night before he was assassinated. He said that, we're living in a sick world right now, some sick times. And 2018, he's on it. We are. We're living in some sick times. And that sickness are those things that I believe that I just ran down to you, those 12, 13 different traits. They're sicknesses, folks. I know there's some other things, but the root cause is right there. And like I said, it's one heck of a Molotov cocktail. When you mix all that stuff up and you put it together, you got yourself a nice gang, don't you? They got it all wrapped up, put it in there, and they're just causing mayhem. So we got work to do, and we just got to keep it simple and remember that we got to help people understand that self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, and motives and desires. We got to work on that. We got to keep it simple and keep challenging ourselves. And I believe that we'll continue the work that Dr. Martin Luther King set forth for us. And that's what he did. He placed the responsibility on everybody's shoulders here. And it's our responsibility to continue to work. You cannot run away from that responsibility. Thank you, and God bless you.